Hi, this is John Haller. I'm going to wait just a minute to let some people join in here. So if somebody would just show me that I'm getting through here. Okay. Sorry, folks. Just trying to make sure everything's going good. Well, in case you don't remember me, my name is John Haller, and I do these prophecy updates. I've been away for a couple weeks. I'm going to, in the show links below, as soon as I finish this, I'm going to put in a link to the conference that I was able to do in Calgary, Canada, called the Last Days Bible Prophecy Conference. If you want to do check beforehand, if this update's too boring for you, you can go ahead and go to YouTube, Last Days Prophecy Conference, and then click on the live tab. YouTube has changed the way that they did that. So I'm not sure which the sessions are kind of combined together, like the morning, the afternoon, in the evening. I spoke in the afternoon and evening on the first day, and then in the morning and afternoon on the second day on May 6th. There were some great speakers. I really recommend that you listen to all of them. Pastors Mantle and Stone from the local Calgary area spoke. Just great talks. Also, Carl Kirby, who used to be with the Answers in Genesis, had some great talks on apologetics. Great guy, and would recommend that you do him. And then Chris Hitalka, and I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right, is a guy who is with Friends of Israel Ministry. He wasn't able to be at the conference, but he sent in some videos. And I think if you want to listen to one video that's just excellent in the way that it sort of brings together the way the writers of Scripture who were Jewish would have written about patterns. He talked about the Shekinah glory, how it left the temple in Ezekiel chapter 9, but that it went out and it disappeared over the Mount of Olives, which is very interesting because at the time of Jesus, the Shekinah glory came from the Mount of Olives back to the Temple Mount area on the triumphal entry on Palm Sunday. And then 40 days later, the Shekinah glory ascended again, but it's coming back, and we know that from Hosea 5:15 to Hosea 6:3, and I talked a little bit about that in my third or fourth talk. I don't really remember, but Pam and I've had a great trip, seen a lot of great scenery. It's very interesting as you drive around, and we've done about 5,700 or 5,800 miles. And I'm in Green Bay, Wisconsin right now, recording this from the eating area, bar area of a Spring Hill Suites. And so there's a lot of people going back and forth, and we'll see how long they'll let me go. But tried to do it outside, but my battery is running down, so I thought I'd better do it this way. But Pam and I've had just a great trip, and it's very interesting as we drive around and we see these things that are just absolutely stunning and gorgeous in all kinds of different landscapes. It can be the prairies of Manitoba and Saskatchewan, or the salt flats of Saskatchewan, the mountains and lakes of Glacier National Park in Montana, the lakes and glaciers and snow-capped mountains, even though it was a little bit cloudy the days we were there, in Banff and Yoho National Parks, the stunning mountain vistas with evergreen forest in Canadian Glacier National Park and Mount Revelstokes National Park, the harbors in in rivers around Vancouver and Seattle and Portland, Oregon, even though there are a bunch of crazy people live in Portland, the falls, Multnomah and Bridal Veil Falls, and then just these incredible landscapes particularly in eastern Washington, which is a very large agricultural region, and then just sort of the barren wastelands of Wyoming and large portions of South Dakota. There's an interesting thing that you should know that I sort of picked up around there. When we were in Rapid City for a couple days on Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and it just poured rain the whole time, and we were really upset about it. But the people in Rapid City said, "Man, we are so glad for the rain." We're in the midst of a 10-year drought. A lady that waited on us at a restaurant, she said that she'd not even been able to grow more than 4 tomatoes the year before because the drought was so bad there in South Dakota. But that brings up another issue that I think is related to Bible prophecy, is that we're entering a time where food security and food issues are going to be very large. The people in the western states, the western breadbasket of the United States, are not very optimistic about how well they're going to be able to produce food this year because of the drought, and that a little bit of rain they've been having is not enough to turn things around. You couple that with the Ukraine-Russia peace deal that is supposed to the Ukraine-Russia peace deal, the Ukraine-Russia grain deal, which allowed Ukraine passage out through the Bosporus and the Dardanelles to transport grain to the world, which has helped alleviate some of the problems. But that grain deal expires in 2 days, and I'm not sure that it's going to be renewed, and that's just going to exacerbate things. So I think the world, people that I follow and watch, there's some guys that some of these are not Christians, so whenever I make a recommendation about someone, understand that they're not, I don't endorse everything that they say, even if they are Christian, and I'm sure they wouldn't endorse everything that I say. But the food security is going to be a huge issue, and there's a lot of there's major famine coming. There's guys like Chris Martinson at Peak Prosperity, Michael Snyder, End Times Collapse or Economic Collapse blog. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I recommend that you would read and follow those guys. So just to recap, YouTube, Last Days Bible Prophecy Conference. Click on the live tab on that YouTube channel, and you'll see the conference sessions. I said I spoke 4 times, and also I don't have a link for it, but I know they streamed it at Parkland Grace Fellowship Church in Calgary. I talked there Sunday morning. Sort of redid a bit of an old message that I've done a number of times, but I think it really ties together a lot of themes, and it tied together perfectly with some of the things that Chris Atalka was talking about when he brought up Ezekiel 8 and 9. It's very interesting how I met Chris in December in Jerusalem when I was at the Christian Media Summit. Again, he was with Friends of Israel, and I think the day that I talked to him, we were down in the city of David taking tour of that great, the Pool of Siloam that's being excavated. I did talk about that in my third talk quite a bit. It's just an incredible archaeological site, and I think that, and I mentioned to Chris when we were talking that, boy, I love this channel called Israel My Channel on YouTube. Highly recommend that you watch it, follow it. The guy does incredible graphics. He's Polish, and he's also with Friends of Israel. So, and I believe Chris helps him somewhat with some of the things that he's done. And Chris does his own podcast for Friends of Israel. So like I said, I'm sure we don't agree on everything, but I would highly recommend that you at least listen to his talk on the Kidron Sagra, about the Kidron Valley and the Shekinah glory that went away, came back, went away, and is coming back again. That's very interesting. I thought it was just an incredible talk. And because I love Israel and Jerusalem so much, it was really kind of an emotional thing for me to listen to. So let's see. There's one other thing that I'm going to... Oh, just so update. I hate it when people do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Just give you an update on some of the things on my schedule this week. I'll be back at Fellowship Bible Chapel on Sunday, May 21st. I may have to keep it short because that's Pam's birthday, and she probably wants me to take her out to lunch. As I said, we've been on this incredible trip. We've done 5,700 or 5,800 miles. We started across the Canadian border at Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan. Went across. Before that, we'd gone across all the way up through Michigan, across the Mackinac Bridge, one of the great bridges in the world. Then we went all the way around Lake Superior on the east and north sides. Spent a couple days in Thunder Bay, Ontario, with some friends who are from Ontario, but actually we live closer. They live about 11 hours from Toronto. We live about 7 or 8. So we live a lot closer to their capital than they do. They live in the same province, and Ontario is just huge. It seemed like, are we ever going to get out of Ontario? Then we went to Manitoba, Winnipeg, on to Alberta, or through Saskatchewan, across. We did stop to get gas in Saskatchewan, looked at the salt flats there in southwest central Saskatchewan, and went to Medicine Hat, spent the night, then went down to Glacier National Park in America, saw an albino buffalo on the way down. We thought, we didn't know if it was that unusual, so we thought, well, we better stop and take a picture on our way back, and it was still there. So I posted that on Facebook. Then we went up to Calgary for about 6-7 days, then on to Banff, Yoho, and through British Columbia down to Bellingham, Washington, then down through to Portland to the Columbia River Gorge, which is just a great drive. So great trip. We have about 500 miles to go, so we'll end up doing about 6,300 miles, 6,400 miles. Tomorrow I'm going to be live at 10 a.m. Eastern on Stand Up for the Truth. Go to standupforthetruth.com. You can click on the live tab and listen to that with David Fiorazzo. And I don't know if Mary Danielson will be in studio tomorrow, but I always love doing that in studio. So as I said, I'm hearing very great. And by the way, that's not the mark of the beast behind me. That's the number of Ray Nitschke. I'm about 2 blocks from Lambeau Field here in Green Bay, where the Green Bay Packers play. And Ray Nitschke was a middle linebacker, one of the greatest middle linebackers of all time in the National Football League. And he was a guy who lived here locally, very popular, owned a dealership, but had his personal phone number in the phone book, and passed away at age 61 back about 1998, but was elected to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and his number was 66. So don't take any symbols from that. What you see behind me is just a little plaque to his memory. So 10 a.m. Eastern tomorrow for Stand Up for the Truth. Also at 5 a.m. tomorrow, not 5 a.m., 5 p.m. Eastern, I believe that interview talk I did with Tom Hughes, I believe we did it on artificial intelligence mostly, did that a week or two ago before he went to Israel. I think that's going to play tomorrow at 5 p.m. If not, it'll be sometime this week. And then on Wednesday, if he can get his technical issues, and it's not good to know that other people have technical issues, but it's comforting to know that they have technical issues. Pablo Frascini of Serpents and Doves, offhand, we'll be doing a talk, and sometimes those can drag on for a long time. Pablo likes the long form. So we'll do that, and then I said back at Fellowship Bible Chapel on Sunday. So let me just share with you some things that I'm going to try to share my screen here. I know this doesn't work all the time, but I'm going to try it. And so I'm going to go here. I'm going to pull up my presentation that I so faithfully labored over while I was on vacation. So what I need to do here, hang on just one second. I want to go to a separate computer to go to YouTube to make sure that my thing is showing. Let's see here, click on live. So, okay. Can somebody just say that whether my thing is showing up or not? Oh, I got to select the actual window, and then we'll do this. Let's see if it. I'm on about a 10-second delay here on my thing. Okay, looks like it's actually showing up. So I'm going to call this one Harbingers. I'm going to try to go through this. Oh, if I said I'm going to go through this quickly, that would be a big fat lie. So we talk about the convergence of events and all the things that are going on. And again, this is the grid that I've developed: acceleration, convergence, logistics, and understanding. I talked a lot about this in my first talk at Calgary, just because I think this is the way I kind of look at things. And I think so kind of keep this grid in mind as we go through today. And the one that at the end, remember, as we get closer to these things actually being fulfilled, we will have more understanding. That's what it says in Daniel. Daniel wanted to know, but as Daniel, forget it. The words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. And I think that is the time in which we live. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So we want to be wise people. We want to be going back and forth through the book to understand what the scriptures are talking about. It does say knowledge will increase, and I think that has a sort of a general application, but I think it has a specific, deeper meaning that people are going to have a better understanding of what's going on in the Bible. And if you hear talking in the background, you'll just have to ignore that. So that we can do this. So anyway, so let's get into this with some of the things that we want to talk about. I think I'm going to skip over this one. This is a very interesting. I'm going to flip over to a different screen here. If you'll give me 1 second. I have to exit out of this one, and I have to go back to my. Let's see here. I'm going to stop that screen. I'm going to share screen. Excuse me. Okay, now I got to go. I got to find a video here. Hang on. Okay, I'm gonna. No, it's not in that one. Hang on. I'm looking for a particular video. I had this all set up, and I closed my computer like an idiot. Okay. Okay, so now I need to get my Chrome up. Boy, this is just so complicated for an old guy. Chrome tab. Okay, so what I need to do is and you have to drag this over to Chrome. Hang on, I have to open another one, I think. Well, that's not working. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the video. I'm going to tell you what it's about. And hang on a second here. Let me do this. Now I got to go to share screen. Hang on a second. It's very difficult stuff to do for an old man. Okay, so I'm going to play this. I don't think you can hear the I don't think you can hear the audio on this, but let me tell you what this is. This is proposed legislation in the House of Representatives in Minnesota, and you can download the legislation. What they're talking about is Amendment A6, and what happened was this person you're going to see here in just a second, she had proposed legislation to talk about we're not going to allow hate speech, violent speech, or that type of thing. So after she did this little talk about Charlie Vector 019er and where it originated from, she kind of said, well, no, you could say where it originated from without being racist. And then she turned around and said, oh, well, it would be racist if you shared that. So you would, and so the the people are going to try to look at that. Then the next thing he asks about is, he says, okay, now let's say you're wearing a T-shirt that says, I love or I like J.K. Rowling. Now, J.K. Rowling, is the author of the Harry Potter novels. She's very wealthy. I think she's a multi-billionaire from those books. Just incredible wealth that she has. But she is a feminist, and she does not like the LGBTQ community's emphasis on transgender because she says it interferes with the it interferes with feminists, women doing things like competing in sports with these guys. It's absolutely insane. And she says, yeah, wearing this is this legislator in Minnesota saying, yeah, that would be hate speech. That would be something that would be flagged and people would be looking into it. So understand, they're coming after our speech. They're really coming after all of us. So here's an article. I think this is from the Wall Street Journal the other day. Red states pressure J.P. Morgan on religion. Just listen to this. J.P. Morgan Chase has become the target of a campaign by Republican state officials seeking to expose what they see as religious discrimination and the bank's business practices. 19 Republican state attorneys general sent a letter this month addressed to J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon, accusing the nation's largest bank of a pattern of discrimination of denying customers banking service because of political religious affiliations. This is true. This is what's happening. And a lot of Christian ministries that deal with the hard issues and issues related to Bible prophecy and the evil that's going on in our society and culture are finding themselves deplatformed. And they're having their ability to raise money, to get paid, monetize YouTube channels and that type of thing. They're just not allowed to do that. So I need to mute my thing here. Okay. And so understand this isn't what happened with the truckers in Canada. There are a lot of people upset in Canada. There are pastors in Calgary that have been put in prison. Art Pulaski, the pastor from a church in Calgary, was convicted while we were there down in a city called Lethbridge. It's got to be a city. They have a Costco, right? Down in Alberta. He was convicted of incitement. I don't know if it's a misdemeanor. I think it's just a misdemeanor charge. And whether you agree with Art or not, you need to understand that the bigger picture is what they really propose to do to all of us eventually. And there's a lot of things being put in place. And I'm going to talk more probably about that on Sunday. So let me continue on here. I want to make sure. Apologize. And this is an article. This is an editorial from the Wall Street Journal on, I think, Friday, about the EPA's new rule about meaning the end of natural gas-fueled electricity. Listen, what the EPA is doing is they're proposing a rules that will essentially, for the first time, going to say that CO2, carbon dioxide, is a pollutant, and as a result of that, they're going to take away your. They're going after all these recently built natural gas power plants, and this is going to affect up to 70% of our grid. It's going to probably quintuple the cost of electricity in the United States. And they're doing all of this at the time where they're saying, well, everybody should drive an electrical vehicle. Carl Techribe, a friend of mine who lives in Saskatchewan, said he was driving the other day and he saw a couple with a gasoline-powered generator. Listen, I trust Carl implicitly. He does great work. He attends these crazy lunatic conferences to sort of report on what's going on there. Highly recommend that you follow him. And I believe his book is Game of God, so I would recommend that you get it and read it so you can understand a little bit about the religious underpinnings of what's going on. But he was driving in Saskatchewan, and he saw a couple with a plug and a gasoline-powered generator that I think was in the trunk of their cars. He drove by, and they were plugging it in, and it was a Tesla. So we don't want to have gas polluting vehicles, but you can carry a gas polluting generator around in your Tesla to charge up your car when the battery runs low. And it's interesting, as we were driving around Lake Superior, we would get to these little towns and they would have these fast charging stations. I mean, way out in the middle of nowhere. Interesting, in the one town there was a fast charging station, and then just across the parking lot, which are all unpaved in that part of Canada, was a Middle Eastern restaurant that it's called Philly cheesesteak, but it served shawarmas and falafels and all those things. I mean, this is way out in the middle of nowhere, Canada. So it was interesting, to say the least. But anyway, to get a little bit more detail on this, Dave Walsh, who I've played a number of clips of, gave an interview the other day on Rumble with Steve Bannon on War Room. So if you go to Rumble, go to War Room, and go to the Saturday show video, there are two videos of Dave Walsh, one about 14 minutes, one about 5 minutes. I highly, highly, highly recommend that you listen to those because in the discussion he had with Bannon, because this is what they're doing. That they are religious lunatics that are trying to take over everything, and it's just it's absolute lunacy. They're destroying the electrical power grid. They think that solar and wind are going to save this. And I can tell you, as we drove 5,800 miles, Ohio, Michigan, Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, Vancouver, Washington, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota, Minnesota. We saw windmills all over the place, and I would say that 80% of them were not turning, and it's very windy everywhere we went, especially from Idaho to here in Green Bay. It's been incredibly windy. I mean, really, really windy, and none of the windmills are turning. It's insane, and we need more power. But it's interesting. I don't have anything on it, but Bill Gates recently did an interview where he talks about doing solar power, or not, nuclear power, and he wants to do it with a sodium infused thing. And I believe it's Kimmerer, Wyoming. They have a test plant where they're putting that up, but it's not going to be operational till 2030. So we need dozens of these nuclear power plants to replace the parts of the grid. Now, some of the leftists are actually coming out and saying, well, maybe we can do okay with disposal of the nuclear waste, and we don't really need to worry about these power grids. We'll do nuclear power. But the whole thing is insane, and there's some people are going to get very, very wealthy off of this. Of course, they're going to step in and do this. So anyway, so I'm not going to talk too much about this. The whole thing in Ukraine continues to confound. Now, I follow a lot of different people, some very pro-Russian, some very anti-American, and some very pro-Ukrainian. I have at least one good friend in Ukraine that gives a very different perspective than what you're getting from Russia. So I don't know how many people have been killed, but I do know that Russia's been trying to get Bakhmut, which is in the map there you see behind this soldier on the right. And in Bakhmut, they've been trying for 6 months to take it over. It's not even that strategic. And there have been, I'm going to estimate, tens of thousands of soldiers on both sides that have been killed there for essentially nothing that's strategic. It's just a symbolic victory. Both Russia and Ukraine, I think, are very corrupt. The Ukrainian or the Russian military guys, they sort of take the guys at the top take a third, they give a third to their cronies, and then a third maybe gets spent on military hardware and that type of thing. And I would suspect that it's a similar thing in Ukraine. A lot of people getting very wealthy off of war. But Ukraine, to me, seems to be a test case to rebuild a society in the in the dreams and fantasies of Klaus Schwab and other people at the World Economic Forum. This is the Project Ukraine is for You thing that was talked about at. Hang on, I got to shut this sound off. I'm listening to myself in the other ear, and it's driving me crazy. So, Project Ukraine is you, not for you, is you. And this was at a special booth building at the World Economic Forum in Davos earlier this year. I think I've played, this is back in December, BlackRock, the big hedge fund company, controls about 12, $13 trillion of wealth, wealthier than many countries, many countries combined, has said they're advising the Minister of the Economy of Ukraine. They've entered into an agreement that they're going to help finance the rebuilding of Ukraine. Somebody's going to make a lot of money if and when Ukraine gets rebuilt. And people are already planning that, and one of the guys is BlackRock. And remember, here's another, this is from the Ukraine, President of Ukraine, Zelensky's webpage, talking about how he discussed with the CEO of BlackRock the coordination of efforts to rebuild Ukraine. That was back in December, and you can go to that webpage and read that if you want, but understand that they have this plan. This is from the New York Times back in November and December, and this is what it says. The world's largest construction site, the race is on to rebuild Ukraine. As the country's leader lay post-war plans, companies from around the world are jockeying for advantages in what could be a multi-billion-dollar effort, although one loaded with risk. And so this is what happens. There's a lot of people. There's people who make money off the war. There are people that make money rebuilding after the war. It's interesting that this is one of the reasons that Russia went into Syria to get the contracts to rebuild Syria, which in large part I think was destroyed with Russia's help, and these barrel bombs that just leveled large portions of Syria. Now, I know that statement is controversial, but I think people that I've talked to that were there will back that up 100%. There were large areas of Sunni neighborhoods and cities that were leveled in the Syrian civil war because that did not align with the people that were helping Assad, who is an Alawite, which is sort of a subset of Shia Islam, and he was funded largely by Iran. So understand that this has, that everybody wants to rebuild, and Russia went in there hoping to get the contracts to rebuild Ukraine. But the problem is not Ukraine, Syria, and the problem is that there are not many, there's just no money that's coming in to do that. And so we still have a major problem. Remember this video that came up, this is published, if you type in Ukraine 2030 and you look at what they're trying to do, they're talking about the fact that they plan 2030. Again, there's that number, that date that everybody seems to be using. Here is a plan to rebuild Ukraine in 2030. And one of the things that they want to do is they want to make it a completely digital society, cashless and everything, using a central bank digital currency. It's just interesting that it seems like everything I read, if you drill down far enough, it's about making this into a test case. So that's that. Now, I'm going to talk about the Middle East, but before I do that, let me make one comment. I think maybe David Fiorazzo and I will talk about this in more detail tomorrow on Stand Up for the Truth tomorrow morning, on Tuesday morning. Elon Musk has hired a new CEO of Twitter. Was heading up some panels or subsections of the World Economic Forum on the future of work and that type of thing. But she's very tied into advertising. She worked for NBC Universal for many years, and before that she worked for CNN or Turner Broadcasting. So she's big into advertising. She's big into digital platforms. And I think what you're seeing there is you're seeing that Elon Musk wants to do what he always wanted to do, is he wants to make Twitter the go-to app for everything, payments and that type of thing. And I think you'll eventually see that it's going to be tied into the payment systems that they're developing, like FedNow. FedNow is not central bank digital currency. It's a payment processing method for central bank digital currencies. It's one of the infrastructure platforms that need to be in place for them to roll out central bank digital currencies. So I don't think it's accurate to say that central bank digital currency is rolling out here in the United States the end of July when the FedNow comes into place. But it's a payment processing platform to kind of replace the ACH transfer system that's in place now. It would allow for instantaneous payments. There's also the World Economic Forum has come out with a thing called Icebreaker that's along the same lines to sort of do this on a grander scale. So there's an infrastructure, there's a logistics part to central bank digital currencies. They're coming. But Musk, by the way, he started OpenAI with Sam Friedman. He left that when he thought Friedman was getting too commercial. He has now bought Twitter. But before he had Twitter, he was one of the founders of PayPal, which is a payment processing system. And so he wants to take that knowledge and put it into Twitter. And so when he bought Twitter, it wasn't just about a free speech platform. It was about an everything platform. So I think you need to be very cautious with Elon Musk and watch what he's saying. So let me just follow up here on the things. Boy, so here's beyond my abilities at the moment. So one of the things here that even Siri's weighing in off my iPad. These are some headlines from the Tehran Times. So you need to understand there's a lot of things going on in the Middle East space right now. For example, this is from I'm trying to remember what day it was. Yeah, you can go to TehranTimes.com and you can click on archive on the right and you can download PDFs of all of these pages. But understand that there's been this push to bring Assad back into the Arab League. And it's interesting, while they're trying to bring Assad back into the Arab League, make him part of the Arabs. If you remember, Assad's father had tried a thing called the United Arab, can't remember what it was called. It was some kind of United Arab government that they tried and did for a time between Iran and Syria and Egypt. But here it's interesting. They're trying to bring him back into the Arab League, but look who's going to Syria to meet with him is Raisi, the president of Iran. That's very interesting. Then on the right, it says here, so think of the imagery that, some of the things we talk about, the hourglass draining out and that type of thing. And now what Tehran is saying is we've turned the hourglass upside down. We're changing things. So very, very interesting imagery and things that we talk about that we in Bible prophecy talk about a lot of times. The mullahs of Iran are also using to describe how Iran is taking things and how they understand it. Now, a very important meeting took place last week in Moscow. And this is the headlines from the Tehran Times. A big step forward. You can see that it involved the leaders of foreign ministers of Russia, Turkey, Syria, and Iran, all meeting there in Tehran. You can see the flags there in the background behind Lavrov, the Russian foreign minister. And they had a nice big square table. It looks like they took Putin's big table and cut it up into pieces and made a big square table out of it. But this is a very significant meeting. And you can see here a big step forward. This is the Tehran Times. This is what the Iranians are saying about themselves. Iran and Russia bring Ankara and Damascus together. They also had another conference in Tehran recently, and this is the report on that. And in the same newspaper, Iran holds international conference on New World Order. So understand that to the Iranians and Russians believe that they're setting up a new world order. Here is this article, Harbinger of the New World Order. And look at the symbols that are used here in this article. I need to pull this up here. Give me 1 second. So the symbols that are used there are pretty important. Excuse me. The chairs here, I'm using a high chair, and it doesn't have a very good footrest, and it just proves my point is I'm a 2X guy in a 1X world, but that's for another time. But look at the symbols that are used here that show you have the chessboard, which I've used before. You see the world chessboard, and on the right, you see that the EU king has been knocked over. Interesting symbols. Then you see the kings of Russia, Iran, and China moving towards and pushing America off, the USA off of North America. These images that are used in these editorials and newspapers are very important. But listen to just a little bit from this article. It says this, talk of a new world, oh wait, here it is. After more than 4 decades that Iran the modern Islamic Republic of Iran came into being in 1979, roughly 44 years ago. After more than 4 decades, Iran's tireless efforts to break Western monopoly have come to fruition as many rising powers are wriggling free from the post-war Western-dominated world order. Talk of a new world order is no longer wishful thinking or diplomatic hallucinations. Instead, it's a reality deeply rooted in strategically important trends that have been taking shape in recent years. The post-war world order that put the U.S. at the forefront of global politics has already begun to crack, with many non-Western powers inching toward redefining concepts and tools that have long been used by the West to achieve domination over other undeveloped countries. And then they talk about the U.S. dollar being one of the cents. And I don't know how quickly the U.S. dollar is going to be removed as the world currency. There really needs to be a market made in another currency to replace it. So the central banks of the world are buying gold like they've never bought before. That makes it hard for people that want to buy gold as a hedge. I don't know how useful gold is. I'm sure that you have to make it a medium of exchange, but as a hedge against what's happening and maybe setting up so a currency could be backed by gold. And it could be that these BRICS countries will come up with their own reserve currency to replace the dollar as the reserve currency. But right now, most of the major world transactions, there's exceptions, but a lot of them are still being conducted in dollars. And that's made the dollar very popular even now, even as things are clearly in a state of transition. So how quickly all of this comes about, this is sort of the logistics part that we talk about. So it's interesting, this is an Iranian newspaper, and it says this: the Arab allies of the U.S. in the West Asia region are a case in point. They have opened up to China, which enabled Beijing to play historic roles in a region where the U.S. was traditionally the major domo. That was on full display in March when China brokered a landmark agreement between Iran and Saudi Arabia. And even in Europe, voices calling for reconsideration of transatlantic relations are no longer seen as dissonant. Today, many Europeans are openly calling for strategic independence from the U.S. Having borne the brunt of the Ukraine war, the Europeans are increasingly toying with the notion of parting ways with a predatory Washington. So, this is a quote from Ayatollah Khamenei. The global order is on the verge of an important political upheaval. This upheaval has 2 main features. It is taking place very quickly. Again, there's your acceleration and convergence, and it is weakening the front of the enemies of the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khamenei said in early April. And you can go to Khamenei.ir and you can look at that yourself. And this is what Khamenei also said at that time. This is about a month ago. The U.S. is one of Iran's most important foes in the world. Facts show that America was weaker under the Obama administration than in Bush's administration. The U.S. was weaker under Trump's administration than the way it was under Obama's administration. The U.S. is weaker under this man's administration than the way it was under Trump's administration. So this is how they look at things. But again, pay attention to the symbols that you see in these newspapers and editorial cartoons and everything, because it says a lot about, because this is a regime publication in Iran, and it says a lot about what they really think. So, you thought I was about done? I just got a second wipe. So, and this is again in the same newspaper. This is how Iran views things. And so very important that you look at this thing. And the way this is coming together, this is a map that sort of shows some of the regions mentioned in Ezekiel 38 and 39. A lot of people want to trace bloodlines and that type of thing. I think when Ezekiel saw the vision, he was seeing the regions of the world as they existed at that time. And here's so this is what the Ezekiel 38 and 39 talk about. The question is, where's Magog? Should it be down in Turkey or not? Some put it up into the area of the Caucasus. It may actually belong over in Central Asia, where the Stan republics are: Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Pakistan, Afghanistan. This is what I call the Stan republics, and I think these are significant. You'll see a little bit about that in just a moment when I talk about Erdogan and the elections that are taking place in Turkey. So, and remember, right in the middle of all this is this big city, Neom, that the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia is building there in northwestern Saudi Arabia, adjacent to Jordan, across the Red Sea from Egypt, and very close to Israel and the city of Eilat. So just pay attention to these regions. You're seeing these alliances form. How strong they are. By the way, in Sudan, that's a Russian-influenced rebellion that's going on right now. The Wagner Group, the Russian paramilitary organization that was set up, as one commentator I said, I can't remember who said this recently, was that, the Wagner Group was set up so that it could go around and commit war crimes that wouldn't be chargeable to the Russian regime. And I kind of think that's pretty accurate. They're a pretty brutal group. So, by the way, the situation in Libya, Turkey and Russia are on different sides here. So understand that the meeting in Moscow recently wasn't so much to set up an Ezekiel 38-39 alliance to invade Israel, but it was to kind of get everybody on the same track, because Iran and Turkey are in direct conflict on different sides of issues in Syria. And some of that relates to what happened in the Turkish elections. So Turkey had a very important election yesterday. The results are just coming in. This was probably, everybody said beforehand, these are publications before the election took place, Hurriyet and Daily Sabah. Daily Sabah is really pretty much a Erdogan mouthpiece. But interesting, they did not publish anything today with the election results. It was interesting that the guy who was running, this guy named Kamal, and I won't try his last name, he came out and said, he released I think he said it at a rally, but this is a Twitter video that he released. And you see he's talking about a train, a rail, high-speed rail across Central Asia, through these Stan republics, through Iran, into Turkey to supply Europe. And this is part of China's Belt and Road Initiative. I've talked a lot about that over the years. And so you can see here, he has, in the thing he's holding up, he has Almaty, he has Tazmint, Tehran, and then it goes into different cities in Turkey. So Turkey wants this, and he's saying, we can do this. I don't know that things would change if this guy's running against Erdogan. I don't know that things would change if he was elected president. Except that he seems to be very pro-Iranian. And the point of this article that was in Le Monde was that he came out and identified himself with a liberal branch of Islam. Erdogan is a Sunni fundamentalist. This guy is a liberal, and that's kind of taboo to talk about that in Turkish politics if you are a liberal Islamist or Islamic guy. But he did that, and he did that just ahead of the election. And it may be to send a message, but the question is who's going to work more with Iran. So there was a lot of charges back and forth in the election as to Russian influence. So Kamal, whatever his last name is, was saying Russia is influencing the election in favor of Erdogan. They're putting out fake videos. And then Erdogan was coming out saying other people like the United States are interfering in the election. So election interference is a theme everywhere around the world. And now the results came out today, and it says that they appear to be headed for a runoff. Nobody got 50%, but look at the number. This is from the Hurriyet Daily News this morning. Erdogan got 49.94%. He needed 50%, so he fell just short. Kamal got 44.3%, and then a guy who supports a united group of a coalition that is pro-Kurdish and pretty much anti-Erdogan, they got about 5%. So now the question is, in 2 weeks, what's going to happen? So here's a little bit more. You can see that the election was very close. And look at this. They had 87% roughly of the population participating in the elections. This is from Daily Sabah website this morning about what's going on. Obviously, I think it's a younger picture of Erdogan. But you can see this is very close. So if you take this guy's 5.717% and add it to Kamal's, because in the election it will be Kamal against Erdogan. So people will have to vote for one or the other. Now, a big surprise is that Erdogan did as well as he did because he's very unpopular. The economy's in shatters or is in tatters. And they had the earthquake, and the earthquake response was not what everybody wanted it to be. So, excuse me one second. So, very interesting. So here's by region. The red is Kamal and what he won, and the yellow is what Erdogan won. So you can see in southeastern Turkey there on the right that Erdogan didn't do very well in the earthquake regions. And it was difficult for those people to vote because of the destruction that took place there. Again, a reminder that a Chinese company said that those earthquakes were the most powerful land earthquakes ever recorded in human history because of the force that they hit with. I think over 50,000 people died. And so the government response, even Erdogan admitted, wasn't what it should have been, and there was a lot of charges of corruption and lax building standards. Erdogan has put in place this incredibly complex and very deep and permeating every aspect of Turkish society of patronage, people that are beholden to him for their jobs and everything. He's a very clever politician. He's been in charge for 20 years. He's been through a number of elections, a supposed coup attempt that had been a fake one. But anyway, so there's a lot of people running around what they're going to say. And I want you to remember a little bit about Erdogan and how it plays into Bible prophecy. I've talked about this before. I'll just recap it quickly. Erdogan says, Jerusalem is our red line. And that came up mainly in response. Remember these headlines that took place? This was in December 7th of 2017. When Trump came out on December 6, 2017, and announced that we, the United States, are moving our embassy to the city of Jerusalem because that is Israel's capital. Here's Israel Hayom. Thank you, Mr. President, in English on the cover of that newspaper. Back in those days, you can see Trump holding up the proclamation. He then did go to Israel in May of 2017. We happened to be in Israel and Jerusalem at that time. A lot of incredible things were happening. In response to that, though, this is from an Istanbul summit. Okay. Okay. I'm sorry about that, folks. This is why you shouldn't talk using your hands. That's what my speaker always tried to tell me, and I said, good luck with that. So I think I'm back. Sorry about that. It had nothing to do with it. I just made a mistake on my own. So anyway, so back to this. Now I got to make sure I'm sharing my screen. Share screen. Okay, so this is and a week after Trump made his announcement, the Arab League met in Istanbul, and they issued this statement on the declaration, the freedom of Al-Quds. That's how they refer to Jerusalem. And look at one of the things they say, we in our capacity, it's just interesting the language that they use and how it kind of relates to Bible prophecy. We in our capacity as kings and heads of state and government and member states of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, coming together at the OIC Extraordinary Summit held in Turkey on December 13th, 2017. So, and those sound again. Testing. I'm showing sound. Can you people hear me? Okay, let me see here. Okay, sounds back. Okay, sorry about that. This is difficult to do. Believe me, my crack staff is not working and they're going to get fired. Nobody's working for me, but that's beside the point. So we invite the Trump administration to reconsider its unlawful decision that might trigger chaos in the region and to rescind its mistaken step. Isn't this interesting that every time somebody does something about Jerusalem, like Trump did something, they said there's going to be chaos in the region. It's just everything's going to fall apart. And things haven't fallen apart. They're sort of falling into place, and people are trying to do things. So here was the meeting on December 13th. You can see all the guys from the Arab Summit, including Abbas was there, Raisi was there. This is not an Arab League summit. This is an Islamic Council summit. You see the guy from Afghanistan was there, that sort of thing. And this is a statement that they issued. Those who think Jerusalem belongs to them today will not be able to find a tree to hide behind tomorrow. Remember, there's a passage in the Quran that says, hey, the tree will say to people, hey, there is a Jew hiding behind me. Come and kill him. This is what the Quran says. By the way, I ran into some people who knew my friend Phil Haney, still in outrage at what happened to Phil. There's no way that Phil took his own life. But at the time in Yeni Sefek, which is probably the biggest mouthpiece of Erdogan of the government publications in Turkey, Yeni Sefek. And you can go to the Yeni Sefek website and you can find it. They publish this. So this is a picture, but you see they kind of have this, behind the soldiers is a map of the Middle East. And you see all these places around it, and then everything is going towards the X there on the left of the page. And that's Jerusalem. So understand that this is what the Bible says, that all nations will be gathered together against it in the last days. We see this starting to form. And included on the website in the publication, and this was the, this is the front page cover, and it says, there's we need to look at this situation about Jerusalem. That's the title up there. A proposal for dealing with the issue of Jerusalem. But look at the map there on the left. This is from December of 2017. This is an Erdogan and OIC approved map comparing, look at Israel in red and look what's drawn around them. And then now go back and compare that to the map I showed you earlier of the different countries identified in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and know that this is Erdogan. You got land, you got sea, you got subs, you got tanks, you got aircraft, all coming against Israel. This is what they really want. So anything else that they come up with is fake and not to be filled. The other thing that's happening is this Shanghai Cooperation Organization is coming together. This is a picture of it. You can see Russia, China, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Iran is now part of it. Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt have been granted observer status and soon will become members of this. So again, you sort of see these alliances, and I want you to remember that what you see on this map here, the Central Asia stand republics, Pakistan, Afghanistan, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, they're all in this alliance. And understand that these Central Asian countries have a very close ethnic tie and religious tie to Turkey. They're Turkmen ethnically. So I personally think that this is part of this end times alliance. I think Russia may join in. Russia may join in because they have an Islamic problem in Russia. I mean, they're approaching 40, what I hear is 40% of the Russian army might be Islamic. And so if Russia has an Islamic problem, how would they deal with the Islamic problem? By saying, hey, listen, you guys will help you go after Israel if you leave us alone for a while. And that may be one of the things that draws Russia into this, if Russia is indeed part of it. And I do think that it is. But the other thing you need to understand too, though, is that as you look at the map, you can see here Russia, and then just to the left of Russia is Ukraine. Trying to think. Yeah, you can see Ukraine there. Russia's I personally think they're having some supply issues. I think they're having supply chain issues. So understand that if they're going to attack Israel, to get from Ukraine to Israel is 1,000 miles. So if they're having trouble attacking Ukraine next door, there's a logistic aspect to Ezekiel 38 and 39 that I think we need to keep in mind. The other thing that happened, one of the things that happened is, and then I'm way over what I said I was going to do. Is big surprise, huh? I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk a little bit about some other things, Middle East, and I'm going to talk about the recent conflict in Gaza, and kind of bring that into perspective, since I haven't had a chance to talk to you for a couple of weeks. But King Charles was coronated last weekend, or early this week. I can't remember when it was. Sometime in the last week. And it's interesting that in the Wall Street Journal, of all places, it talked about Charles III, the priest king. Now, there's a theory out there that I'm not totally dismissive of. Okay, I just want you to understand that. I'm not totally supportive of it. I have baskets of things. So I have an Islamic Antichrist basket. I have a European Antichrist basket. I have a King Charles Antichrist basket. And so I sort of put things in there to see how each of those views is going. So one of the views is that Charles is the Antichrist and that he was anointed with oil from Jerusalem in a private anointing ceremony that this article talks about. As you see in the subheadline there, the world watched his coronation, but his anointment was conducted in private. And it talked about the fact that it's called chrism. I want to read you a quote here. The olives for Charles Chrism were grown in the groves of the monasteries of the Ascension and Mary Magdalene in Jerusalem's Mount of Olives. By the way, I believe that Charles' maternal grandmother, the mother of Prince Philip, is actually buried in Jerusalem at the Mount of Olives. I think that's the case. Continuing, the formula was prepared by Greek Orthodox monks and then blessed in the Church of the Holy Sepulchre by the Orthodox Patriarch of Jerusalem and its Anglican Archbishop. Archbishop Welby of the UK said, this demonstrates the deep historic link between the coronation, the Bible, and the Holy Land. Archbishop Welby. And again, I'm not saying that this is totally supportive of this theory about King Charles, now King Charles, formerly Prince Charles. But I'm just saying is, we need to look at all of the different aspects. Archbishop Welby explained before the coronation, without mentioning Jews, Israel, or the British government's refusal to recognize Israel's sovereignty on the Mount of Olives, the world's oldest, largest, and most sacred Jewish cemetery. No British monarch has visited the state of Israel. Charles' father, Prince Philip, visited privately in 1994. Prince William made the first official visit in 2018. Perhaps Charles can deepen that, quote, historic link. Very interesting, and that's in the Wall Street Journal. And I think it's probably behind a paywall, but I'll try to, you can freeze the screen and read it, I guess, if you want to. So here's this recent dust-up between Israel. What happened was a prominent Palestinian terrorist who was in Israeli prison went on a hunger strike and died. Then Palestinian Islamic Jihad, PIJ, started launching rockets from Gaza into Israel. These were unusual. Some of them reached places that hadn't been reached before. Some hit in neighborhoods in Jerusalem. Some also hit in Efrat. Efrat is a region between Bethlehem and Hebron. Actually went to a Shabbat dinner before I left Israel at the home of a Jewish rabbi and his family in Efrat. So they were hit, and this has not happened before. As I mentioned before, I spent some time. They took us in the media summit down to the Gaza border, and the one lady who talked to us said, "Listen, I consider this kibbutz where I live to be 95% heaven and 5% hell." Because when the rockets go, I have 10 seconds to get to a place. And then they took us outside the center where we're meeting, showed us a memorial to two men who had been hit by a Palestinian rocket. And also in that attack, a man lost both of his legs. We then went up to another community center for dinner. And the man who had lost both legs is now the mayor of that region. And he came and talked to us about that event and what had happened. And they said up there that we're 90, I can't remember, I think it was 99% heaven, 1% hell, because we have 15 seconds when the rockets go off to make a decision. So this is what they live with. I saw pictures of people huddling in bus stops in Israel. They closed schools in the south. I mean, this is always a big problem. This is the original part of the what the IDF published about what became known as Operation Shield and Arrow, the response to that. And so you see this, and then this is the updated that I just saw this morning. Iron Dome had a 95.6% success rate, 437 Iron Dome interceptions, 1,468 rockets launched, 11,000 came into Israel. So that means that 300 and some 290 misfired and landed in Gaza, 1 in 5 rockets. So, but I saw pictures of children on rooftops cheering that they launched these rockets, knowing that the Israelis are going to respond. And they did. Israel, as usual, they did an incredible response with the Air Force, and they took out the top 3 Palestinian Islamic Jihad commanders. They were replaced by 3 commanders who then were taken out by Israel. So the top 2 layers, the replacement layer, have all been removed by Israel. Part of why Palestinian Islamic Jihad did this was to get Hamas to participate, to kind of provoke them into response, but Hamas did not. And that may be because the Hamas backers in Qatar and somewhat in Iran told them not to. Iran seems to be always sort of playing, they want to get close to the line but not cross it, because Iran doesn't want a full Israel response, whether Israel gets the U.S. to help or not. But Israel's in a tough spot. I mean, the weapons stores that the United States has stored in Israel, my understanding has been completely depleted and taken to Ukraine. So that makes Israel very vulnerable, and it's hard to get these supply chains redone. Iron Dome was successful. It's an incredible thing. Here's a picture of an actual Iron Dome missile intercepting a Palestinian rocket. there's another picture I don't have that shows them before the collision takes place. It's an incredible system, but it costs about $100,000 a rocket to do that. Now, for the first time in one of these conflicts, what Israel did was Israel put in place this Palestinian, or they put in place David's sling. And this is a video that Raphael, a defense contractor in Israel, has put together and published about David's sling. So this is the unclassified part. And they did use several David sling missiles to take out the Iranian weapons. But the problem with David's sling is more for ballistic missiles. Iron Dome has kind of limitations on what kind of rockets it can take out. But David's sling is a little bit better. Here you can see how they have this dome that they put over and how they protect Israel from ballistic missiles. But the problem with David's sling is it costs about $1 million for each one of these missiles that they use to take out the incoming rockets. So they can build these incoming rockets for in the low thousands of dollars maybe. And then Israel has to spend $100,000 if they use Iron Dome per missile, or $1 million per missile in David's sling. So it's very, very expensive. Now, what Israel is doing, this is another Israel Defense Force unclassified thing. This is a thing that they're developing. They hope to deploy this within a year. It's called Iron Beam, and it can be deployed on aircraft. It can be deployed on, portable. It can be deployed on ships and that type of thing. And essentially, it's a laser system. So for literally comparatively cents on the dollars, it can take out these incoming rockets. The problem in drones, the problem is right now that it's got very limited range of about maybe 1 kilometer to 2 kilometers. It can take something out. So it'd have to be deployed in many, many, many places, but it can be operated for cents on the dollar if they have the device in the right place. So I don't know how quickly this is going to come online, but there's a lot of confidence that it will come online soon. So that's David's, and that's called Iron Beam. So you have Iron Dome, David's sling, and Iron Beam. And here you see this, it could be deployed by Israel on a drone to take out a missile, either before it's launched or shortly after launch. It uses a laser and electricity, and again, here's the representation of how this creates sort of a dome of protection over Israel. But again, very limited range right now. They're trying to improve that, and it's really state of the art in the world, but it's just not coming about. And I think this is the last one that I'm going to use. This is a tweet today talking about why Israel is not apartheid. There was one Israeli killed in the rocket attacks. This is my understanding. There are a number injured, 70 or so injured, but this man was killed. He was an Arab from Gaza who was working in Israel. He was, when he was injured, he was treated, they tried to treat him in an Israeli hospital. They didn't care whether he was an Arab. And because he was killed in Israel, even though his family lives in Gaza, they will receive Social Security benefits under Israeli law. That happens if someone is killed in a terrorist attack like this. So anyway, that's pretty much what I have, and I appreciate you listening. Again, Stand for the Truth live tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. I believe Hope for Our Times on the app or on their YouTube channel. The discussion that Tom Hughes and I recorded a couple weeks ago on artificial intelligence, I believe is going to be broadcast at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific tomorrow on May 16th. And then I think I'm going to record and maybe do a live interview with Pablo Frascini at Serpents and Doves Offhand on Wednesday. And I think that's at 2 p.m. Eastern. But I'll post on Facebook. Just watch. You can catch the replay anyway. Look, I appreciate you listening. Sorry I was gone for so long, but I had a great time with my wife. Great. The other thing that I learned on this trip is we have this just incredible fellowship in the body of believers. I mean, we went to church in Calgary on Sunday and I spoke, but they had all the kids in the service. It was very cute. In the last row, there were like 3 families that all have girls, and all 8 girls were sitting together, all lined up. And some were ethnic Asian, some were white. It just didn't matter. They were all sitting there, lined up by height in the back row, listening. And it was so great to see that, and such a blessing. So anyway, thanks for listening, and I will. I'll get back to you. I'll see you Sunday if not before Sunday, or if not before then, I'll see you on Sunday. Thanks so much. God bless.